And so we know that with leaping into God and leaping into his foundation, we can take that energy and really propel. But we often want to see where we're going. We're going to see where we're landing. And that's not always the case with your walk with the Lord. And so he's like, do you trust me? And it's the eyes that want to see, but it's the heart that needs to have the faith. And so for those who are fasting alongside any of us, it's, we want clarity. I always hear that every single time when we do a fast and we're asking, what are you looking for? What's the hope? What's the intention? And they're like, I'm just looking for clarity. And we already discovered in that one call this morning at 6:30 that the clarity had already been given. And it's actually just the action behind the next step, where more clarity will happen. When you're writing a story, for instance, you get a book and you're like, okay, I just want to skim through this. Well, the end has already been written, so you can go to the end and read it. But that's not how our stories are. God knows the end, but we have to be willing to write the next sentence with the Lord. We have to be willing to write the next chapter with the Lord, and without knowing the future. And so I don't know if anyone's in a fasting mentality right now, or it's a practice that's your commonplace. But it is, as I have made it commonplace, I have been blown away by how God responds to that act of obedience. And the biggest thing that I wanted to bring to the call today was the concept of unlearning and what we have to unlearn in order to walk in the fullness of Christ. And I am unlearning more than I probably am learning on a consistent basis. And it's character conversations, it's trauma, it's culture, it's religiosity, even though I don't like to put myself in those confines, but we can surely do that and become a Pharisee and Sadducee pretty fast. And so taking a step back from those things and practicing an ease. Jesus had such an ease. Like I love the Chosen for that reason, to just be able to see how he like potentially could have walked with such graciousness. And it doesn't have to be so fixed and focused and forced, as society often is teaching us to do, especially teaching our kids to do. And so that's a part of my unlearning, is how I was raised to how I am now and how I get to break those cycles for my children. Said a lot right there. So I'd love to pause, take a breath. What's landing for people? What are you hearing? What is the Spirit speaking through me as I'm sharing these concepts?
So the first challenge of the day,
I've
you
had
said
many,
talking
so
about when we have more trust when we're landing on solid ground.
mm.
How solid was the ground that Peter was landing on when he stepped out of the boat?
Oh yeah.
By his own understanding, it was very unsolid. But
Yeah.
by his faith in the one who called him, he made it solid.
Right.
The solidity fell apart when he began to look at the storm around him. Sometimes it's not even in our own understanding that we're standing or jumping to solid ground. It's knowing who's calling us to jump. And if he tells us to jump, knowing that regardless of what we've been told, what we think, it is solid.